Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days as Storm Noah is now clearing out in towards Europe. The pressure is slowly starting to rise, and by the end of the weekend and into the start of next week it's going to be quite a bit drier and it's going to start to turn a lot warmer too. The extent of that warmth and potentially heat is very uncertain at this stage, but it's looking quite likely we will see 20 degrees somewhere next week, potentially widely, and could be quite a bit higher as well in a few spots if we do see some of these warmer runs appearing. Now, it's going to be an east to southeasterly flow, so it will mean the air is coming in off the near constant, and subtle shifts in that wind direction will make big differences, as we'll see on the long range chart. Some are showing cooler air masses coming in, others are showing warmer southerly or southeasterly air masses moving in. It will still be sunny and relatively warm, depending on the exact upper air temperatures, but whether it's sort of high teens widely or low 20s to mid 20s widely, we'll have to see, all dependent on those upper air temperatures. So we'll have a look at what those longer range charts are showing towards the end of the video, but the headline is that it will be a lot warmer and a lot drier as well next week. Properly hints of some summer-like conditions. So, do remember, if you enjoy videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So you start on the live radar, you can see at the moment it's very unsettled through parts of northern and western Europe, and this is the remnants of Storm Noah, which has now sort of cleared away and filled in a bit, so the pressure is rising, but it's still generally lower pressure, so we're still seeing a lot of showers developing across northern and western Europe. You see a lot of heavy thundery weather through parts of France, some snow over the Alps, and you can see into England and Wales some heavy thundery showers as well, moving up into Scotland, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland as well. Just widespread moderate to heavy showers with some thundery or very heavy showers in a few spots too. You can see a bit of snow over Scotland. There is generally quite cold air associated with the low pressure system over the top of us at the moment, so there is snow around, and there's been some falling snow over even quite moderate hills through the last sort of 24 hours or so. So quite a cold feel out there at the moment. Temperature struggling into the low double digits, but it will steadily rise over the coming days, as I said, before reaching likely 20 degrees in a few spots come early next working week. Now, to keep on the temperatures, as of around 1:30, you can see temperatures aren't all too warm. Some yellows around, so temperatures getting into the double digits, but still plenty of blues appearing as well, which is temperatures in the mid to high single digits. So really quite a cool feel out there, good few degrees below average for the time of year, but it will be rising towards average for the time of year through the weekend, as I said previously, well above average come next week. So do now have a look at the UKV and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of days. You can see at the moment those showers are just continuing to pepper us through the rest of today, before it should start to clear overnight. We could see another weather front move in through the early hours of tomorrow morning, and it could give some more widespread showers through parts of England and Wales, and again through northern areas as well. Through the afternoon, again, mostly light to moderate, but it could be a few heavy thundery showers within that through the afternoon. But luckily, once this does clear into Friday, it will be turning quite a bit nicer. And you can see through Friday night into the early hours of Saturday, a lot better conditions start to win out. And eventually, by Saturday afternoon, look at that, a few showers around, but generally quite sunny, and will be turning quite a bit warmer. Still some pop-up clouds, as I said, those a few dotted showers, but still generally a lot better day. And then finally into Sunday, weather fronts try to push in from the west, but are really quite unsuccessful, coming up against high pressure. Once again, most of England, Wales and Scotland in pretty sunny and dry weather. Still a few showers through the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, but still a bit of sunshine creeping in. And then finally, as we head into Monday, again, really quite dry, a few showers in places, generally pretty sunny too. So looking really quite dry and really quite sunny, and eventually quite warm from around Saturday, Sunday onwards. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see why initially it's not particularly warm. Through Friday, look at those upper air temperatures are still relatively chilly, a couple of degrees below freezing, and a couple of degrees below average as well. It does stay relatively cool through most of the weekend, but eventually warmer air masses do move in. There could be some cooler pockets of air coming in from the east, as it is a continental flow, so there is some cooler air across Europe, but generally the upper air temperatures will be rising to average to above average and potentially quite a bit above average come the middle of next week, which will give us much warmer and much drier conditions. So if you finish by just looking at the max temperatures from the UKV, again you can see that through this afternoon, peaking maybe 10 to 12 degrees, maybe the isolated 13 or 14, but very sceptical of that, very much dependent on cloud and shower activity over the next hour or two. And then through tonight, pretty chilly, frost in some regions as those temperatures do dip, especially through parts of the Republic of Ireland and Scotland. And then into tomorrow afternoon, once again, those temperatures struggling to get much above sort of 10 or 11 degrees, in some areas only 7 or 8 where we see thicker cloud and showers. And then finally, as we head into Saturday, still pretty cold overnight, and into Saturday afternoon, rising a bit higher, 14 or 15, and widely 13 or 14. So, turning quite a bit warmer, a degree or two above average, and starting to climb into Sunday. You can see in the far west, where we are a bit more sheltered from the easterly breeze, 16, 17, or maybe even isolated, 18. Still warm in the east, still 14 or 15, but best conditions will probably be in the west and the northwest. And then finally, as we head into Monday, again you can see the temperatures still really quite warm in the north and west, 16, 17 or 18 degrees, and through central and eastern parts 14 or 15, so really quite nice and pleasant, and that will continue to rise as we head into the middle of next week. So do now have a look at the latest GFS, see what that's doing over the course of the next couple of weeks. You can see the low pressure over the top of it at the moment, the remnants of Storm Noah. It's generally unsettled and cool conditions. We see that other little low pressure system moving off the Atlantic through tomorrow, and that gives us that rain and shower activity in many parts of England and Wales. However, through the weekend, high pressure built in initially with a bit of a southerly or southeasterly flow, but it does veer more easterly, and that's why there could be slight pockets of cooler air next week, but there are still quite a bit of uncertainty over exact wind direction, exact air masses, but generally high pressure dominated, a lot sunnier, and probably quite a bit warmer too. Now, GFS does try to do its typical thing, turn us a bit cooler and more unsettled in the longer term. Still a lot of high pressure around, but typically has us sat over a bit of a cut-off low over northern and western Europe, keeping us very unsettled and pretty chilly there all the way to the end of the run. But from what I'm seeing from the majority of runs, that looks like a little bit of an anomaly at this stage. Majority keep that high pressure over the top of us with any low pressure incursions, very brief and still not too cool or unsettled. So you can see initially warmer air masses do move in, but eventually the GFS does try to pull in some relatively chilly air masses. You'll see in the ensembles at the end of the video that this is an anomaly. The majority keep those warmer sort of 5-degree air masses in, which the GFS sort of splits between our south and our north, bringing in an easterly wind. So GFS being a little bit of an outlier here, and again similarly with it turning quite a bit cooler in the longer term with -5 line moving in under lower pressure, so that would be really quite chilly. But I do think this is a bit of an outlier run from the GFS up to at least A7. Most runs do have us under the higher pressure with warmer conditions generally, so GFS definitely is. So it's a little bit interesting in the longer term, but I wouldn't look too much in that at this stage. It is changing on every single run. The general theme, though, for high pressure dominated, a lot more sunshine and generally warmer conditions, we do still see here, at least for the start of next week before it does go a little bit on a tangent. But I do think that is just the GFS playing up, as most ensemble members do have it well above average for the middle part of next week. If you look at the GM, see how that does compare, whether that does go for slightly cooler weather, or whether that does keep us in that warmer and dry weather, which the majority of runs go for. Again, high pressure building in next week, and you can see the southeasterly flow, generally pretty warm all the way for most of next week. We do see that brief cooler air mass potentially at times, and we do see hints of maybe a northeasterly around day 10. But we have to remember, look at those upper air temperatures, it's actually pretty mild. Even though the wind does veer in more from the north and the east, the upper air temperatures are still quite a bit milder. That cold air really is hanging over Scandinavia. So even though it does have a similar sort of pattern to the GFS, it's not quite as quick in evolving it, and when it does eventually do it, the winds are a lot slacker, so the air masses are actually quite a bit warmer, just sat over the top of the UK. So do run through that. Again, you can see the high pressure building in with pretty warm air masses. And even when we do pull in that slight easterly, it really does diminish that air mass very quickly. So perhaps a small pool of cooler air next Thursday or Friday for eventually things to warm up a little bit again. So again, a little bit of an anomaly once again. all dependent if we do see that slightly cooler little upper trough moving in through later next week. It's something that we can see at the moment, but we won't be able to predict exactly where it does go for at least another couple of days. So we'll just have to see what other runs are showing. As the ECMWF doesn't pull it in, ECMWF actually keeps us very warm. So again, ensemble members is probably the best way to view this. Operation runs, of course, are going to show us some sort of niche little systems moving in, like this little upper trough, but we'll only be able to really grasp what will happen exactly on sort of the micro scale as we do head up into it, sort of the days leading up to it. At the moment, the overall theme of higher pressure, east to southeasterly winds with generally warmer conditions looks like from the majority of runs are showing. If we do finish by looking at the ECMWF, again, low pressure in control at the moment. High pressure does build in with a warmer air mass, and you can see that wind does veer in from the easterly, but it never develops that upper trough as the air is slightly more southeasterly, and it means the air is coming up from the Mediterranean, quite a bit warmer and quite a bit drier as well. And you can see that at day 10, the high pressure actually starts to sink to our east instead of our northeast, so that trough that's sat over Scandinavia is actually sat over Iceland, and this will keep us pretty warm, but could produce some thunderstorms in the west, perhaps here. So, very similar to the other two runs, the GFS and the GEM, but just shows you if the high pressure moves slightly further eastwards, it does show a hugely different outcome. So, all three runs showing high pressure and control, generally east to southeasterly winds throughout most of next week before the high pressure does start to move, but all three runs showing slightly different outcomes for that movement in the higher pressure as we do progress beyond next week. And again, if we do look at those upper air temperatures, you're able to see it does go quite warm from the ECMWF. As the high pressure builds in, inevitably warm air does move in. We do pull in that easterly. So could be some slight cooler air masses for a time there, but eventually we do actually pull some really quite warm air from the Mediterranean. Look at that, 10 or 15 degree isotherm moves in incredibly warm up towards day 10. And again, look at the United Kingdom. Look, those temperatures at the surface will be really quite warm during the day. Look at that. Midday getting up towards the mid to low 20s there, 21 to 22 degrees, and by 3 p.m. you'd expect it to be a good few degrees higher. So looking at potentially 25 degrees with this sort of pattern from the ECMWF. Again, just how I said the GFS and the GFS was on the lower end of the ensemble members, the ECMWF is on the higher end. So it's sort of somewhere in the middle. 25 degrees in the ECMWF, GFS going for some much colder conditions. It's somewhere in the middle, most likely around the high teens, low 20s is sort of the figure for most areas next week. Again, it could sway either way, but as we'll see the ensembles in a minute, majority have us somewhere in the middle with the upper air temperatures around that 5 degrees at 850 HPA. Warm, dry, but nothing exceptionally hot or cool either. And again, if we do have a look at the temperature deviation for this, you'll be able to see it is well above average for the time of year, a good 10 to 12 degrees above average in many southern and eastern areas, just showing you how warm it could get if this run came off. But I must emphasise, majority only have us around that 4 to 6 degree range above average. So we finish by looking at the ensembles. These are the latest GFS, just updating it there so we can see the full extent, and you can see how it will be generally average to above average over the next couple of weeks. Again, it's difficult to say exactly what the surface conditions are like because we're getting to the time of year where a 5 degree at 850 HPA can give into the low 20s because that's sun strength. And you can also see that although the temperatures in the longer range are only around average, it's well above average compared to what we have now, because the 1981-2010 mean is around -1 or -2 right now for the sort of 13th of April. But come the 29th, the average is getting to around 2 degrees. So the actual 1981-2010 mean jumps by about 3 degrees in the next 2 weeks. So we're at the sort of that turning point where we go from potential for any cold weather to warmer weather. And that sort of turning point means that even though the upper air temperatures are on a steady trajectory up, the average actually does catch up with us from this latest GFS run in the longer term. If we just ignore that though and just have a look at the actual raw 850 HPA temperatures, you can see it's going to be well above sort of freezing at 850 HPA. It's going to be pretty warm and it's going to be pretty dry with pretty minimal precipitation apart from the next day or so, and some spikes into the longer term, but again, nothing too major. And you can see the GFS operational run there well below what the majority of runs are showing, and that's why I said it's well off the bottom and quite an unlikely solution at this stage. And again, if we have a look at the 2 metre temperatures, Look at that, most are going from 15 to 20 degrees. Early next week, probably more towards the 15-degree point, around sort of Monday to Wednesday time, 15, 16, 17, probably warmer in the west, so away from London it's probably warmer, a good few degrees warmer, as we do see that wind come in from the east, of course. As it warms up over land, it will inevitably give warm conditions further westwards. But into the longer term, as that wind likely veers more south to southeasterly, we do see those temperatures climb up a bit, 15 to 20 degrees. So it does look warm, it looks dry next week, nothing exceptionally hot from most runs, but there is the potential there, and equally there is the potential for cooler conditions to prevail from this high pressure system, like that GFS operational run was showing. And if you do finish by looking at the ECMWF ensembles, you can see how it is similarly going to be average to above average over the next couple of weeks, and really quite dry too. Definitely the warmest conditions come around that sort of 18th to 25th April point, and once again you see the 1981-2010 mean jump up a bit. So again, it is difficult to see that although we're not actually too much above average in the longer term, we're a good sort of 5+ degrees warmer than what we are right now. And you can see the operational runs are kind of off the charts there. There are runs that go similar to it, up towards that 10-degree point, but don't get quite as warm as it. So that sort of 25-degree range, there is a possibility we see that, but I think definitely more likely sort of 20 to 23 degrees is sort of the top that we can really achieve next week or into next weekend, unless we do achieve a really warm air mass like that, which only a minority of runs are going for. So from what we're seeing from the majority of ensemble runs and the majority of operational runs over the last few days, it's looking likely next week we'll get into the 20s, most likely initially at least in the north and the west, but perhaps more widespread later next week as we do see that wind veer more southeasterly, or the air mass to our east warms up a little bit, as we could see a brief pocket of cooler air there. You can see around the 19th, so around sort of Wednesday next week. As I said, beyond that, more widely warmer, and I think the tip-top temperature will be somewhere around that 21 to 23 degree range. Can't forecast it accurately yet because we don't know the exact air mass, we don't know the exact wind direction, but roughly in that ballpark. So nothing too exceptional, pretty much average summer temperatures, but we are seeing it in the middle of April after quite a cool period this week, very stormy period, and after some quite cool weather in March as well. So it is going to be really quite warm. It will be a little bit of a shock to the system, even though on the thermometer it's nothing ridiculous compared to what we generally see in the summer. It will be a bit of the shock to the system, so make sure you go out and enjoy it, and make sure you do wear some sufficient sun protection, as the sun is very strong, and it will be a really quite nice feel next week, and hopefully for a quite persistent period as well, as it does look likely in the longer term that high pressure will be hanging around at least through most of next week, maybe even beyond that. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.